Hi, it's Courtney, and this is my psychology illustration project and a visual of how I conceptualize psychology. When I first thought of the history of psychology, the first thing that came to mind was a tree. Any tree begins with its roots deep and hidden in the ground and continues to grow into something even bigger, branching off and still continuing to grow. I visualize the history of psychology like this because it has its roots and beginnings that are sometimes hidden and continued to grow and branch off into different disciplines, ideas, and inspirations during the 1800s, leading into our contemporary domains of psychology, such as clinical, developmental or school, industrial, organizational, behavioral, and cognitive psych. This scientific field of psychology still continues to grow in the same way today, just like a tree continues to grow and branch off. This is my tree of psychology. At the bottom of my illustration, you will see the roots of the tree. I have placed Plato and Aristotle down here as the roots of psychology because these philosophers began these psychological thoughts and inspired others to carry it on. I also pictured them this way because they are hidden and not many people, including myself, know or consider these philosophers as beginning this kind of psychological thinking because it is considered a different discipline. Moving up the tree, I have placed Wilhelm Wundt on the tree trunk and center of the tree of psych. I think that Wundt deserves to be placed here because he is considered the father of psychology. In addition, he established the first experimental psychology lab in Germany and was interested in sensation and experiences, even though he came after Locke and Weber, as well as consciousness, which I thought were two main ideas that most of the people we have learned about fall under. Above all, Wundt was inspirational and influenced many of the individuals that are further up the tree that we have discussed throughout the semester, which I think is deserving of this placement in the center. Next, we will move up the left side of the tree. One major topic of early psychology was sensation, which differs by each individual. Two important figures that were interested in sensation are Ernest Weber and John Locke. Weber developed his idea of the just noticeable difference, which is the amount of something that has to be changed in order for there to be a difference that is noticeable. Weber said that if there is something of smaller weight, then there will be a noticeable difference when a smaller amount of weight is added. Similarly, if there is a large weight, the difference will not be noticeable until a large amount of weight is added. Locke, on the other hand, created his idea of the paradox of the basins, where he described that objects have primary physical qualities, but they also have secondary qualities, which depend on each person's own sensational experience. The experiment was that one person placed their hand in a bucket of hot water and another hand was placed in a bucket of cold water. Then both hands would be placed in the same bucket of warm water, and in doing this, the hand that was in the hot water bucket will now feel cold, and the one that was in the cold water will now feel hot, even though they are feeling the same water, showing that secondary qualities are related to one's own sensation and perception. In the top left corner of the tree, I have placed Leitner Whitmer, who established the first psychological clinic. Within his new clinic, he operated with a team approach, where a psychologist, a physician, and a social worker were all present for the evaluation of the individual. This allowed for different expertises to be present and also allowed for differing opinions in the evaluation. This directly led to the development of the domain of clinical psychology, which is still a large field of psych today. Similarly, G. Stanley Hall was focused on child development, where he initiated the child study movement, where he tried to study children to find out as much information as possible about their development in order to tailor education and parenting to their specific needs. In today's society, there are child study teams in schools to make decisions about accommodations and adjustments for students wherever needed. Within this, there is a similar team approach utilized where there are many different individuals present to help make decisions and provide their expertise, such as a social worker, psychologist, teacher, learning consultant, etc., which is just like Whitmer's team approach for clinical psychology. Hall, his movement, and this team approach are all manifested within today's domain of developmental and/or school psychology. In the top middle of the tree, I have placed Walter D. Scott, who was involved with business psychology and the psychology of advertising, even though he originally did not have much background. He created his own advertising techniques that are still sometimes utilized today. Although he does not directly connect to many other psychologists, he is still integral to psychology because he jump-started the domain that we still utilize today, industrial organizational psychology, which uses psychological principles and applies them to the workplace. Next, we will move up the right side of the tree, where there are many linkages. This side of the tree has its roots in the concept of consciousness. Both functionalism and structuralism are focused on consciousness. Structuralism focuses on the structure and makeup of the mind. One key structuralist was E.B. Titchener, who believed that consciousness can be broken down into different elements, such as duration, intensity, and clarity of what we see. He discovered thousands of these elements and wanted to arrange them in a table like the periodic table of elements for chemistry. On the other hand, functionalists were more concerned with how the mind works and why. Two notable functionalists are William James and Charles Darwin. James believed that consciousness was a stream, which continuously flowed and could not be broken down. James was also interested in self-psychology, which is the study of the empirical or external self, and the I-self or internal self. James's student Mary Calkins also emphasized the study of self-psychology, suggesting that it was important to know ourselves fully. On a different branch, Charles Darwin was considered a functionalist as well, and developed many new, exciting ideas and influenced so many who came after him. Darwin created a new theory that was revolutionary called natural selection, suggesting that organisms who are better adapted to their environment will survive and reproduce. Even though this is considered biology, this gave us a new way of thinking in psych, that adaptations and differences can be good. Darwin also gave us the field of psychology interest into a new subfield called animal psychology, which uses animals to study to gain information on humans. Although he was not a behaviorist, Darwin had influenced what we know today as behaviorism. Taking Darwin's ideas from evolutionary psych, Ivan Pavlov used dogs to study behavior conditioning, where Pavlov would ring a bell when presenting food to his dogs, where they would salivate. Eventually, he would remove the food stimulus and the dogs would be conditioned to salivate at the sound of a bell. This caused interest in doing the same for humans. John Watson was another psychologist who studied behavior and took this phenomena and applied it to humans. He did a study with an infant named Little Albert, where Watson conditioned him to fear anything white and fluffy by making loud noises at the presentation of a white rat. Even though the baby was not previously afraid of the rat, he was conditioned to fear it because of the presentation of the scary, loud noise. These influences from Darwin to Pavlov to Watson all lead to a domain that is called behavioral psychology today. Not only did Watson have a large influence and impact on behavioral psychology, but he also influenced what is called Gestalt psych, which studies experiences as it occurs and suggests that the perception of a whole experience is different than its individual parts. It has a lot to do with perception, and many optical illusions that we play with today are associated with this field of psych. This is a subset of the contemporary domain of cognitive psychology. On the final branch of the tree of psych, stemming from Darwin again, is Sigmund Freud, who studied what people before him did not think was important or did not think could be studied, the unconscious. People were so interested in consciousness, and Freud was able to take this to the next level and tap into studying the unconscious. Whether we agree with him or not, this was a huge deal for the field of psychology because there is now a believed way to help the mentally ill and those with other underlying conflicts. These two connect because both of their ideas have to do with the needs of organisms. Darwin's ideas suggest that all organisms change to meet their needs, whether that be adapting to reach food or adapting to pass on better traits. Freud similarly suggests that we have needs and instincts that must be met, stemming from his psychosexual stages of development. In studying the unconscious, Freud developed his idea of psychoanalysis, which is Freud's theory that conflicts lie in our unconscious, and we must dig into the unconscious to resolve these conflicts and heal any mental issues through methods like dream interpretation and free association. I would argue that this could be a subset of cognitive psychology as well, because we are dealing with the unconscious mind and the issues that lie within the mind. To conclude, I picked a tree to represent the history of psychology because of the growing and branching nature of both the tree and the field of psychology. From the roots to the branches, each part is integral to the tree, and each part on this tree is integral to the development of psychology. I hope you have enjoyed my tree of psychology as much as I have enjoyed creating it.